It is 7:42 on a Saturday morning in October of 1973, and an 8-year-old boy named Tommy is the first person awake in a small Cape Cod-style house on a quiet street in Toledo, Ohio. His parents are still asleep at the end of the upstairs hallway. His 5-year-old sister, Karen, is asleep in the small bedroom across from his. The house is quiet except for the soft tick of the kitchen clock and the occasional pop of the gas furnace coming on. Tommy sits up in bed, pulls back his cotton blanket, and steps onto the floor in his blue striped pajamas with no socks. He walks down the hallway in the dark, past his parents' bedroom door, past the closed bathroom door, down the carpeted stairs, through the living room, past the silent television set with the wooden cabinet and the rabbit ear antenna, into the kitchen. The kitchen floor is yellow linoleum, and it is freezing cold under his bare feet. The gas heat does not reach into the kitchen until the sun comes up. He climbs onto the kitchen counter to reach the cabinet above the stove. He pulls down a yellow cardboard box of Cheerios. He cannot reach the refrigerator handle yet, so he cannot get the milk. It does not matter. He fills a small ceramic bowl with dry Cheerios, climbs back down to the floor, and carries the bowl into the living room. He sits down on the brown shag carpet exactly 3 feet in front of the television set. He turns the television on by pulling the silver knob. The screen takes 40 seconds to warm up. He turns the channel dial to channel 7. He lies down on his stomach on the carpet with his chin propped on his elbows and the bowl of dry Cheerios beside him. He picks up the Cheerios one at a time with his fingers, eating them slowly, watching the test pattern of WJBK Detroit fade into the opening notes of the Looney Tunes theme song. It is 8:03 a.m. Bugs Bunny is starting. Tommy is alone in the living room. His parents will not come downstairs for another 2.5 hours. That moment, the 8-year-old American child, alone in the living room of his family's house at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, lying on a shag carpet in his pajamas, eating dry cereal with his fingers, watching cartoons while his parents slept, was, for approximately 50 million American children of the 1960s and 1970s, the single most universal experience of childhood that ever existed. Every American child in the country, in roughly the same demographic, in roughly the same income bracket, was lying on roughly the same kind of carpet, watching roughly the same cartoons, eating roughly the same cereal, at roughly the same hour, every single Saturday morning, for approximately 25 years. That experience has ended. It did not end gradually. It ended specifically and identifiably in a series of technological and cultural shifts that took place between approximately 1985 and 2010, after which the Saturday morning of the American child became a different thing entirely. Most modern American parents, who were themselves the 8-year-olds on the carpet in 1973, have not been able to give their own children a Saturday morning that even slightly resembles their own. The reasons are complicated. The result is the same. For the next 20 minutes, we are going to go back into that Saturday morning. The specific feel of it, the specific sounds, the specific smell of the carpet, the specific texture of the dry Cheerios on your fingers, the specific moment your father appeared in the kitchen in his undershirt and changed everything by walking in and turning on the coffee. The cartoon started at 8. Looney Tunes on Channel 7, broadcast by ABC. Bugs Bunny first, then Daffy Duck, then Tweety. The animation was the original Warner Brothers theatrical animation from the 1940s and 1950s, recycled and re-aired 30 years later for children who had never seen it before. The jokes were aimed at adults. The violence, the cartoon violence of anvils dropped on heads and dynamite exploding in faces, was extreme by modern standards and totally normal at the time. Nobody thought twice about it. At 8:30, the show changed. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You came on. The same 5 teenagers in the same Mystery Machine van solving the same Haunted Mansion mystery for the 472nd time. You knew it was going to be the old groundskeeper in a rubber mask before the first commercial break. You watched anyway. At 9, Super Friends, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, the Wonder Twins, and the gorgeous floating cosmic background of the Hall of Justice. The animation was crude. The plotting was simple. The Wonder Twins always activated into something stupid like a bucket of water. You loved it. At 9:30, the Pink Panther. Mostly silent, just music. The Pink Panther got into trouble. The Pink Panther got out of trouble. Henry Mancini's saxophone carried the entire show. You did not realize, at age 8, that the Pink Panther theme was one of the most brilliant pieces of pop music of the 20th century. You also did not know that the Pink Panther was, in fact, a pink panther, and not just a strange pink dog-like creature with a long nose. Between every show, in the 2-minute breaks, came something that no modern American child has ever experienced: Schoolhouse Rock. 3-minute animated educational shorts, produced by ABC, taught to an entire generation of American children every Saturday morning between approximately 1973 and 1985. Conjunction. Junction. What's your function? I'm just a Bill, sitting here on Capitol Hill. 3 is a magic number. Lolly, 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 get your adverbs here. 40 million Americans can still sing every single word, 50 years later, on demand, by heart. The songs taught grammar. They taught civics. They taught multiplication. They taught American history. They were better than any educational content the modern American school system has produced since. And between Schoolhouse Rock and the cartoons came the commercials, 45 seconds at a time. Saturday morning commercial advertising of the 1970s was a separate art form from the cartoons themselves and was, in many ways, the actual primary content. The G.I. Joe commercials, where the toy was always shown in fake jungle settings doing impossible things. The Tonka trucks driven over by an actual elephant to prove they were indestructible. The Easy Bake Oven, which used a single light bulb to bake a tiny cake out of a packet of powder and a tablespoon of water. The Big Wheel, the molded plastic tricycle that every American boy demanded for Christmas. The Sea Monkeys, advertised in the back of comic books with cartoon drawings of smiling underwater families wearing crowns, which, when you finally received them in the mail, turned out to be brine shrimp the size of grains of rice. The cereal commercials, Sugar Smacks, Sugar Pops, Sugar Crisp, Fruity Pebbles, Cookie Crisp, Lucky Charms, with the corresponding cartoon mascots. By age 6, you knew every commercial by heart. By age 8, you could hum the jingles. At some point around 9:30 in the morning, your sister came downstairs. Karen, 5 years old, in a pink nightgown and bare feet, dragging her stuffed rabbit, would appear at the bottom of the stairs and walk silently into the living room and lie down on the carpet beside you, without saying anything, and stare at the television. She did not ask permission. She did not negotiate which channel to watch. She watched what you were watching, because there was only one television in the house, and you had been watching it for an hour and a half and were not going to surrender control. The dial was a problem if you wanted to change the channel, and you sometimes did, because by 9:45 the cartoons on Channel 7 were less good than the cartoons on Channel 2. You had to physically stand up, walk 3 feet to the television, and turn the dial. There was no remote control. There would be no remote control in your house until your father bought a new television in 1981. Until then, every channel change was a small physical labor. You watched what was on Channel 7 because getting up to change the channel was annoying. The whole concept of channel surfing did not exist in your house. You watched what was on. You watched it until it was over. You watched the next thing. By 10:30, you had been watching cartoons for 2.5 hours and were starting to feel slightly sick. The dry Cheerios were gone. Your mother had come downstairs at some point. You barely noticed, and had silently refilled your bowl with more cereal, this time with milk. She had asked you to turn the television down. You had not. She had not insisted. She had walked into the kitchen and was now making coffee. The smell of coffee reached the living room around 10:45. American Folgers, brewed in a Mr. Coffee electric percolator, which had only been invented in 1972, and which was, in 1973, considered an amazing technological luxury. The coffee was the signal that the adult day was beginning. The cartoons were ending. The Saturday morning that belonged to you was over. Your father appeared in the living room at 11 o'clock. He was wearing an undershirt and gray plaid pajama pants. His hair was sticking up. He had not shaved. He sat down on the brown plaid sofa behind you, holding a coffee mug, and he did not say good morning. He grunted slightly. He looked at the cartoons on the television for approximately 15 seconds. He stood up. He walked the 3 feet to the television. He turned the dial. The cartoons disappeared. In their place came college football pregame coverage, ABC's Wide World of Sports, or Channel 4's NBC Sports, or the news on Channel 8. Whatever it was not cartoons. Your father had decided that the cartoons were over. There was no negotiation. There was no discussion. There was no asking. The Saturday morning of the American child of 1973 ended at the exact moment when the father came downstairs, drank his coffee, and turned the channel to whatever the father wanted to watch. You and your sister did not protest. You did not throw a tantrum. You did not say it was unfair. You knew the deal. The cartoons were yours from 8 to 11. From 11 onward, the television belonged to your father. You stood up from the carpet, took the empty cereal bowl into the kitchen, and went outside to play. There was nothing else to do. You played in the yard with the neighborhood kids for the next 4 hours, until your mother called you in for dinner. The entire arc of the Saturday morning. Wake up alone, watch cartoons alone, sister arrives, mother makes breakfast, father arrives and ends the cartoons, you go outside until dark. Was repeated every Saturday morning of your childhood, with only minor variations, for approximately 12 years. From 1968, when you started watching cartoons at age 3, until 1980, when you became a teenager and stopped watching cartoons at age 15, you had approximately 600 consecutive Saturday mornings, in roughly the same configuration, on roughly the same carpet, eating roughly the same cereal, watching roughly the same shows. That sequence has not happened in an American household in approximately 20 years. Saturday morning in 2026, in the typical American home, looks like this. The 8-year-old is awake. He is in his own bedroom. He has been awake since 6:15. He is holding a tablet or a smartphone. He is watching a YouTube video or playing a video game or watching a streaming show or scrolling TikTok. He is alone. His sister, age 5, is in her bedroom, doing the same thing on her own device, watching different content. They are not in the same room. They are not watching the same thing. They will not, at any point during the morning, sit on the same carpet together and watch the same cartoons. Their parents are still asleep, but their parents do not need to wake up to manage the children. The children are managing themselves. The children have not eaten any cereal. The children are not lying on a shag carpet in front of a television set. There is no television set in the living room of this particular American family. There is one mounted to the wall, but nobody watches it on Saturday mornings, because everyone has their own screen. When the parents wake up around 9:30, the father will make coffee and check his phone. The mother will make breakfast for whichever child says they are hungry, on demand, at whatever individual time that child happens to want food. There is no shared Saturday morning meal. There is no shared Saturday morning television. There is no shared Saturday morning, in fact, in this household. There are simply 4 separate Saturday mornings happening simultaneously in the same house, on 4 separate screens. The shared cultural ritual of the American Saturday morning that approximately 50 million American children experienced from the late 1960s through the mid-1990s ended somewhere between 2005 and 2015, when the smartphone and the tablet replaced the family television set as the primary screen of childhood. The end was not announced. The end was not noted in the newspapers. The end happened so gradually that the parents who had lived through the original Saturday morning, and who were now the parents of the new generation, did not notice it ending until it was already over. It is the most ordinary loss imaginable. It is also one of the most complete. There is no household in the United States today in which the 8-year-old wakes up alone, lies down on a shag carpet in front of a wooden cabinet television set at 3 feet, watches Bugs Bunny followed by Scooby-Doo, followed by Super Friends, followed by the Pink Panther, eats dry Cheerios with his fingers from a ceramic bowl, has his sister come down and lie beside him without speaking, sees his mother making coffee, hears his father come downstairs in an undershirt, watches his father change the channel to college football, and then goes outside to play until dinner. That sequence does not happen anywhere. It has not happened in 20 years. It will not happen again. There are approximately 40 million Americans alive right now who are the 8-year-old on the carpet. They are in their 50s, 60s, and early 70s now. They remember everything. The way the carpet felt against their cheek, the exact sound the television made when it warmed up, the specific song from the Schoolhouse Rock about the conjunction, the taste of the Cheerios eaten dry without milk because they could not reach the refrigerator, the smell of their father's coffee mixing with the gas heat coming up through the floor register. They have mostly not been asked to describe it. If you remember any of this, tell us in the comments. The specific cartoon you watched every Saturday morning that you can still hear the theme song of 50 years later. The specific cereal you ate, the specific bowl, the specific position you lay in on the floor, and the specific moment your father came downstairs and changed the channel, ending your Saturday morning every single week without ever realizing he was doing it. Because if you do not tell us, nobody else will know what it felt like to be the 8-year-old on the carpet in front of the television, alone, at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning in 1973, in any town in America. Subscribe if you want more videos that go back inside what it actually felt like. Share this with someone who lay on the same carpet you did, and I will see you on the next one.